Have you ever designed the perfect system and then just never touched it again? Well, I definitely have. Welcome to the club. This isn't about bashing notebooks or planners or systems or apps. It's about 3 real reasons why even a well-built system can fail and what you can do instead. This is inspired by 2 wonderful notebooks, perfect notebooks. They were the perfect notebook. I set these up earlier this year. I haven't touched them since January, and it is August. Today I'm going to talk about not getting ahead of yourself, being honest with yourselves, systems for the win, and then a little bonus mindset thing at the end that has really helped me a lot this year. Lesson 1, don't build the whole system up front. This is the main notebook that inspired this video. It's a commonplace style notebook. I have sections for all of my areas of life, and this doesn't just apply to notebooks. The stuff I'm going to talk about can apply to notebooks, apps, planners, especially discs and rings when you have flexibility, and even filing systems, whether they're paper or digital. I built this notebook in an over-designed way. I had the idea of it, I'll talk about a little more later, but I started planning ahead because I wanted to make sure that everything fit into my sections. And so I had to think through it and how much room I was going to need. And so I had a Google sheet with, figuring out I have 150 pages, I have this many sections, how many pages does each section need? It was a thing. Maybe you've done that before. Maybe you've designed a Google sheet and then had, drop downs and tables and different views and linking to other things and then never touched it again. This goes on and on, right? It can be anything, an app. You set up an app and you just go through and you set up this perfect hierarchy, and maybe it's the type of app where you have different views. You set up all these views and all these projects and tasks and folders, and then again, you don't know how it's going to work from day to day, and the way that somebody else, set it up doesn't work for you. Notion templates, don't even get me started. This is the trap for designing for your ideal self, not your actual self, or trying to use somebody else's well-designed plan that maybe it took them years to build and then trying to start and jump in. Why do we keep doing this? Well, I know I keep doing it because it just seems like the right thing to do, right? You want to start things right and have everything ready to roll. Another reason, I do it because it's fun. Now, it's not a bad thing to do this stuff because you enjoy it, but you have to think about, are you doing the building because you enjoy it? And are you going to do it again next month? Or are you doing the building because you need to actually get stuff done and you don't have time to do this every month? So you just have to ask yourself those questions. If you need to get traction, you have to build efficiently. When you're building stuff like this, you have to ask yourself, how could I go slower? And maybe you can't, but at least pause and ask yourself that question. How could I do this incrementally? How can I make this work for now and then let it have some room to breathe and grow and evolve so that it works for me? Besides MVP, standing for the most valuable player, I worked for a few software companies, and there's a term, I'm sure it's used in other industries, MVP, right? Minimum viable product. And so the idea is you put something out there that's okay, good to go, but not what you really wish you could put out there, right? Kind of the progress versus perfection version of getting a product out there. So think about your systems like that, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. Because often the way that you think you work, or you think the way you're going to work, isn't the way that it actually works in practice. The takeaway is build what you need for this week, not for this year or for your whole life, and not for your ideal self. Build it for your actual self. That gets us to lesson 2. If it's not important enough to you, you won't use it. You set things like this up because something is important to you. Everything in your life is going into it, or some aspect of your life is going into it, and that's important. Or at least it was at the time. But here's the hard part. Is it important enough for you to come back to it day after day, week after week, in the midst of everything else that's going on? You have other important stuff. And is this going to actually happen? In lesson 1, we talked about how your setup might be aspirational, designed for your ideal self. In that lesson, we were talking about the design. Now we're talking about the actual content. Is what you're tracking or organizing or curating really that valuable to you in the long run? Or is it just something that you think you should care about, or you wish you cared about, or somebody else cares about? If you've watched videos on my channel, you know I am a big fan of spiral notebooks. I've been running a spiral notebook each season. I go on 2-month seasons. I've been doing that for 2025, but I've been using spiral notebooks on and off as my planner or in addition to my planner since 2022. And I found At Home with Kari in some point in early-ish 2024, and then I found her again in late 2024, I think it was, and I had systems set up for 2025 already. I had purchased multiple planners. I had a very complicated system that I had all lined up that was going to work perfectly starting in January of 2025. And then I went, after I saw her video where she added a second book to her system, that included where she kept her things that persisted past each individual notebook. She uses a notebook for 4 months. She doesn't have as much in it. I use a notebook for 2 months. But either way, you're going to have 3 to 6 notebooks each year. But she started one that was going to go all year with the stuff that she wanted to carry through. And I thought, oh, that's going to make notebooks work for me. So I didn't use the planners that I purchased for 2025, and I went all in on notebooks, and I set this up. The other one, I'm going to say for just a second, is a garden notebook that I set up week by week, labeled all the pages. Maybe you'll see it another time. So one of those things in Kari's notebook that stuck around all year was her cleaning tracker, and she had used them in her regular one, so she knew that it worked for her. That was where she went right and I went wrong. I went, ooh, I like that, but it hadn't been working for me. And so I set it all up. I spent the time, and then I never used it. I've set up these cleaning trackers over and over the years in rings or discs or an app, but it's just not the way it works for me. I thought, this time I'm retired, it's surely going to work. Nope, still doesn't work. What does this mean for you? You set up something with the best intentions. You take a course, you see something in use, maybe, in a YouTube video somewhere. Never happened. And you think, this is going to work great for me. Works for them. And at the time, whatever it is dealing with, whether it's one area of life or, it's an overarching thing. And at the time, the topic felt really important. Like my garden notebook, I thought, I'm going to record something in it every week. But over time, your priorities change. You don't pick up the notebook. You stop opening the app. You stop clicking on the dock. And it's not just because you forgot. It's because somewhere in the back of your mind, your brain has just said, this just isn't my priority right now. This just isn't that important. I have other things that I have to do. And sometimes you're tracking things that you thought you should care about, and you actually really just don't. This doesn't mean that it's never going to be important to you. It just means you thought it might work. It's not the right season. There's a difference between this is a good idea and this is a good idea right now with my current obligations and energy levels. Takeaway, track what really matters, not just what seems to matter when you're most inspired or most vulnerable. Lesson 3, make it easy, make it routine. Separate tools are totally fine to use as long as they're easy to access, simple to use, and you have some sort of a routine or plan for when you're going to use them and how. That's the reason that planners are so popular. They're kind of an all-in-one stop for a lot of different things. It's also why people like to go digital, because you can have one device and it can have all the things in it. And it's true, having everything in one place can be more convenient, but it doesn't mean that it's the easiest. Where things break down is you've got stuff in your all-in-one planner, but it's in the back of the planner and you have no plan to ever go back there. You've got a notebook, but it's separate and it's on a shelf back there instead of on your desk that you use over there all the time. And your desk doesn't have a lot of room to keep your current notebook and that other notebook in the same spot. Now, the second notebook is still fine. I could still use it, not with stuff that I dated 2025, but there's still lots of room in it and I still have the same areas of life. I didn't record stuff in it because I didn't really set up a plan to. The reason for the second notebook in general was because of that long-term stuff that I wanted to persist instead of having it go away at the end of 2 months. And it's a great idea, but what happened was a lot of the stuff that I would have liked to have had recorded somewhere, I just never wrote it down because it should have been in that book, but I never picked up that book. I only picked up that book. It would have been better for me to just put everything in that book and index it well, and I would have been better off. And if that got tedious over time, then I could have branched out into a second book. Another example for me is sheets and docs. Especially with the YouTube channel, I have a lot of digital files and a lot of stuff captured in sheets and docs. And I'm trying to get my groove there. I'm, figuring out how I like things bookmarked. I need to get better with tabs and tab groups and all that sort of stuff. But a couple different things. I'm using the bookmark bar, and or I'm just making a doc with a list of links and when I need to click on what. The other thing that helps me is my daily routines tracker. Now, it got bloated. I nuked it and started over, and I'm just putting simple things on because my life has changed from when it was first designed. You can check out that video from a couple weeks ago when I started it over, and I'm slowly building it. I'm slowly building it up over time. Takeaway: tools are only helpful if you have a system or a plan in place that you know when and where and how they're going to get used. Otherwise, they just sit there, stacking up like your good intentions, like all those planners that you see on my bookshelf that I cleaned up the other day during a live stream. Now, here's the bonus mindset tip. If it's not working, just let it go. Don't feel bad. Systems are meant to serve you, not the other way around. Let's take a look at my notebook. Why might that have failed? Well, maybe it didn't work because my main notebook was working too well. I felt too married to it, and I wanted to put everything in it. And I didn't really think about it till I was writing this to record. That meant I was going to have to record things twice because I still wanted it in my notebook. And so it felt like double duty for a lot of things. And so maybe that's why I didn't do it, because I wasn't running my system before I added to my system. Or maybe a lot of that stuff just wasn't as important to do on paper, and I have digital records of things. If a tool stops working for you, it doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you're a flake. You don't have to use it just because you built it. You can come back to it later or not at all. It's okay to get clear on what actually matters to you. Takeaway: drop the guilt, learn the lesson, move on. If you're rethinking your setup right now, also, I have a free guide that I will link below called Your Simple Productivity System. It's not an exhaustive system, but it covers the basics, helps you choose the 4 tools that you need to capture your ideas, calendar your appointments and events, manage your tasks, and plan your day. And I will also link to a video that accompanies that. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you again soon. Take care. Have a good one.